Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we're going to explore controlled remote viewing. With me is Lyn Buchanan. He is the author of The Seventh Sense, Remote Viewing Secrets as Told by a Psychic Spy for the U.S. Military. He is also the executive director of a corporation based in Alamogordo, New Mexico called Problems, Solutions, Innovations. For 8.5 years, he was a member of the remote viewing program run by the U.S. Army at Fort Meade, Maryland, and in fact was the training officer for that program. Welcome, Lyn.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here.
It's a pleasure to be with you. And now we're going to focus specifically on this process known as controlled remote viewing. And you have a shirt that says CRV on it, and I see it says describe, don't identify.
That's right. This is one of the things we found out very early on, that the conscious mind uses nouns. The subconscious doesn't. It uses descriptors and symbology and all that. And so we just made the rule, no nouns. Describe. Don't try to tell me what the target is, just describe the target. And we found out that more clarity comes out in the description than if you name it. Also, we found out that a remote viewer, if let's say the subconscious wants to tell you red. All it wants to tell you is that something about the target is red. And so it gives you the symbol of a big fire truck. Your conscious mind says, fire truck, there must be a fire. And it starts building this whole scenario of buildings burning down and all that. All it wanted to tell you was red. And so nouns go to the side. We just put them aside. The subconscious mind will pass information through the body. It doesn't use words. It uses pictures and feelings and emotions and all that. And so we found that, Ingo Swann, who created controlled remote viewing, found that if you pay attention to your body instead of to your subconscious mind, you'll get the information more clearly. And so he started out by saying, okay, we're going to make a sort of a language. And he gave us 7 things, water and land and such as that. And he said, okay, draw just a minimal graphic representation of water. And everybody generally goes,
so waves.
Wave. Okay, how about land? And just like the wax on, wipe off, he'll do this thousands of times until you become so bored with it, you're not consciously paying attention. He'll say water and your hand goes like this as a knee-jerk reaction. That has trained the body to tell you when there's water. And so then once you get that, he'll say, okay, I have a picture in an envelope here, describe it. And your hand goes like that. And you do waves and something with a 90-degree angle. And by that time you've learned, I don't know what's in the envelope, but it's something with water and something that's manufactured. 90-degree angle.
90-degree angle.
He opens the envelope and here's this boat sitting on the ocean. And simple targets like that. And then over a long period of time, you get more and more complex targets and so on.
So it's never a question of telling anybody how to be psychic.
No, you are psychic.
Yeah.
The controlled remote viewing process is simply a thing where you say, okay, I want to know what's at the target. That's part of you that is already psychic, gets the information, passes it back through the body, and of course, after the first stage where you're doing these little lines, you start getting feelings. You start getting, like in a daydream, you start seeing colors. You start smelling smells and all that. But it's all the body. You're paying attention to the body. The body acts as a translator between the subconscious and the conscious. It's a martial art. It really is a martial art. Just like, a wax on, wipe off. And because of that, we have never found anybody who can't learn it. And you don't have to be some psychic. And in fact, in the military unit, after I'd been there for a while, they decided, okay, we're going to call Milpersen, Military Personnel Center, and have them give us the first name out of the computer of somebody who needs a new reassignment. We got this woman in named Linda, and she had never had any psychic experience in her life. She didn't believe in it or anything.
Basically selected at random.
She wound up to be one of our best viewers because she could take instruction.
And there are other stories like that, I know.
A lot of them,
But some people are obviously more talented than others.
Yes, they are. And many times they will find that it's easier to get the information and report it. But it's also usually harder to train them because they're so, they want to be psychic.
So in other words, people who come to you who believe they already are psychic are going to be more difficult to work with.
They're going to be more difficult to work with. And there have been a couple where we just had to get them reassigned and say, you won't give up this woo-woo type stuff. And we're soldiers. We're intelligence collectors. We don't do woo-woo. And so there were a couple that we, that probably were good psychics that we just had to say, here's a good reassignment for you.
So when you were read into the remote viewing program at Fort Meade, and then your training began, how long did that training last?
As far as me learning to be an expert master remote viewer, I'll let you know when it happens. I've been in this for, 35 years?
And you're still learning.
I'm still learning. We are absolutely in kindergarten. We're learning secrets of the mind and what the mind can do, and it's just phenomenal. We've just barely scratched the surface. But with the CRV, with the controlled remote viewing, you first learn that wax on, wipe off process.
Now, why do you call it wax on, wipe off?
Because it's all physical. In the movie, the Karate Kid, wax on, wipe off, and one day the master takes a swing at the kid and his hand goes up without thinking. And when you get to where it's such, you've practiced it for so long that the minute your subconscious says there's water at the site, your hand goes like this. That's it. It's a martial. It really is a martial art.
I see. And so the idea is to train the instincts.
Train the instincts. And to train the physical body so that it reacts to subconscious information.
Well, okay. Now let's use the metaphor of the martial art. A good martial artist will spend their whole life practicing. But at some point you achieve a brown belt, a black belt. I would imagine if we're talking martial arts, that a talented person can become a black belt in 3 years, I'm guessing.
I would be surprised at that, but yeah. But for the remote viewing, when I went into the unit, they said it's going to take at least 2 years to become proficient. They started working me as a proficient remote viewer after 6 months. Now, when this Linda came into the unit, she took to the training, and I mean, she was a military person. She took to the training, and I think it was about 3 or 4 months before she was working operations. And there's a thing called Morphic Resonance.
Yes.
And it's often called the 100th monkey theory. I really believe in that. The more people who learn to do this, I think the easier it becomes for more people. And
in other words, there's sort of a pattern in the zeitgeist that new people can pick up on.
Yeah. And now we've got people who come for a 3-day class, and at the end of it, they're doing work that we were doing after 6 months. It's been just a phenomenal growth pattern.
In other words, there may be changes going on in the culture as a whole that are making it possible for people to do better and faster work.
That's right, yeah. And the process, though, you do the wax on, wipe off. That's called stage 1.
Okay.
At some point, you get to where you say, oh, there's water. And you say, tell me about the water. Oh, I don't know. And you say, the monitor says, taste, texture, temperature. And the viewer says, oh, tastes salty. Because they get a little salty taste. That's your body giving you the information from the subconscious. And you start describing the water. Then you say, well, tell me about the land. Oh, it feels sandy or something, you know. Tell me about the person. And it grows like that. And you start learning to describe. Then that's stage 2. We get into stage 3 where you sketch. Get into stage 4 where you say, okay, you say the person is tall. Tell me how tall. And as these stages grow that Ingo Swann made, you get more and more detailed information. By the time you get up to like stage 8, you can draw computer boards. You can draw the floor plans to buildings halfway around the world. We got to the point where we could pretty well read documents that were in safes locked halfway around the world. It's amazing where this goes, but it's a highly structured technique. There's no woo-woo, there's no close your eyes and imagine or anything like that. It's all a uniform military way that gets information from your subconscious out onto a piece of paper where you can hand it to a general and they can, you know.
But let me ask you this question. I have heard the phrase used by one proponent of remote viewing. He calls it military grade remote viewing and implies that it's 100% accurate all the time.
No, it's not.
Under the best of circumstances, how accurate would you say it has been?
I kept the database, okay? We had an average of 82.7% accuracy. Now, that's an average. So that meant that we had 90% accuracy, 95% accuracy, 20% accuracy, you know. And so the average was that.
Okay, 87.5 is fabulous.
Oh, it is, you play the stock market with 87.5% accuracy, you're going to make money.
But I haven't heard about any remote viewers becoming fabulously wealthy.
No, you won't. we use analogies for a lot of things, and there's the analogy of the gold ring.
Yeah.
You find a gold ring in your backyard.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go tell everybody about it. You dig a little deeper and you find a chest full of gold. Mm-hmm. Who are you going to tell about it? Mm. You're going to keep quiet. Mm. And so this is one of the things you hear on the internet, you know, win the lottery, make money, and it will convince everybody that remote viewing works. Mm-hmm. You start winning the lottery, you're not going to tell people. You know, and so there are a lot of stories and a lot of proof that I know personally from other people who are really doing well at this, and they go silent.
I see.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are actually doing this for corporations and working professionally at it, and everybody says, "Oh, show me proof." No. We sign non-disclosure agreements. Right. We're not going to tell anybody, you know.
Well, I have heard, though, for example, Joe McMoneagle, who is acknowledged as one of the very best.
He is.
Perhaps the very best remote viewer. Yeah. I have heard, if I recall correctly, from Ed May, the scientist who works with him and has worked with him for many years, that I think he's put it this way: Joe can be 100% accurate about 10 to 15% of the time.
Wrong.
Okay.
He can be close to 100% accurate 50% of the time. Mm-hmm. Now, Joe makes no bones about it. 50% of the time, he totally misses the target. Mm. I mean, score him at 0. Okay. But when the other 50% of the time, I don't know of anybody who can touch his results. Mm-hmm. He is fantastically good. Mm-hmm. And that other 50% of the time, he's very close to 100%. I mean, but as long as you've got humans doing this, you know, those icky humans, they're never perfect.
Well, you know, in my own experience, I think, you know, I learned remote viewing on the civilian side.
Right.
And it was very simple. They told me, you know, of course, I was in this multi-million-dollar research facility, and all of the subtle cues were telling me, you're going to do this.
Right.
Because everybody does.
Everybody does.
And, you know, first time out of the box, it was practically a home run.
Yeah.
But then it kind of dawns on you, wait a second, what have I done here?
And that's when your defenses come up. And it's called the first-timers effect. Mm-hmm. You have a really high score, but then you have to integrate that into your life, and your score drops. Yeah. And if you quit, it never goes back up. But in the military, we had to continue. And we would continue, and then from then on, it's plateau learning. You accept it, your score goes up. Then we start training you, and as you learn more, you go to the next plateau, and so on. And so it was very much plateau learning.
That makes sense.
But you had to accept it into your life. Your life paradigm changes. And all of a sudden you realize, I can do this. And it changes your life. It really does.
Now, if I recall correctly, when you first joined the unit at Fort Meade, there was some suggestion that a few marriages had broken up.
Not because of the remote viewing, though, because of the secrecy. Everything we did was classified. We could not go home and tell our family what we did. And that happens in all of the intel and all of the classified projects. You have this situation where you go home and you can't talk about what you do, and it causes a rift. It's one of the problems of all intel units.
It didn't have to do with any changes in personality as a result.
Well, because it actually did, because as we change, we can't tell why.
Okay.
And that paradigm change doesn't happen in things like, other spy units and all that. But the paradigm change in your life will happen in the remote viewing unit, and those couldn't be explained when you go home.
I gather
it mattered. Yeah.
I don't know you well personally, but I get the impression that this whole process has opened you up spiritually.
It does. When I do training, I have a training agreement, and one of the paragraphs is that it uses the example of a hardened alcoholic who learns remote viewing and suddenly realizes he doesn't need the alcohol anymore. But his wife, whom he married because she was a fellow drinker and all that, she doesn't change. She now needs a new drinking partner. The divorce, don't come blaming me for it. Okay. When you open your mind up and take all the limits away, sure, there's going to be personality changes. And one of the problems with that is that your family may not accept it, your relatives may not, your friends may not accept it, and you can grow away from them. You can grow out of them.
Yeah.
And so it can cause life changes, yeah.
And you found that amongst some of your students.
Yeah. And it always winds up being for the betterment of the person themselves. But for their relations, it may change their life. And so this is not something I would recommend for everyone. It's really not.
It seems as if, from what you're telling me, controlled remote viewing started out as a procedure taught to soldiers in the military, just like they might train you to how to clean your rifle.
Right. And the thing was that it was not meant for psychics.
Yeah.
It was always meant for people who are not psychic, who don't have all that natural ability. And the funny part was when it came out to the public, everybody jumped on the scientific bandwagon. I'm a remote viewer, not realizing that a remote viewer is a person who doesn't have the ability, so they have to be trained. And you've had all these natural psychics who are good, all of a sudden saying, I'm a remote viewer. Oh, who trained you?
Well, although I don't call myself a remote viewer, I was introduced to remote viewing, and there never was any training.
Yeah, and over time, the term remote viewing has become the new term for psychic.
For clairvoyance.
For clairvoyance, yeah. But originally, it meant somebody, it was designed so that you could pull a soldier out of the battlefield, train him to do this. He could go back to the unit, tell his commander what was over the hill, where to point the guns and all that. And so once it came out to the public, it came out as military uses psychic spies.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the history of the SRI thing came out.
Yeah.
It became scientifically proven. And so natural psychics all started saying, I'm a remote viewer.
Okay.
We had crystal
They just pick up on the language, in other words.
We had crystal ball remote viewers, palm remote viewers, pendulum remote viewers, tea leaf remote viewers.
I see.
And
none of that has anything to do with controlled remote viewing.
No, it doesn't.
Which is the process that was used at Fort Meade.
That's right, yeah. Because it was a standardized process that was martial arts based.
Well, like martial arts, in a sense, it evolved into what I would think of as a spiritual path for people.
Oh yeah, and it has a lot of that same thing. One of my students is an 8th level black belt ninja, and we were walking down the hall one day, and he was in front of me, and I thought, I wonder if I could reach up and slap him on the back without him. And he never broke stride. He never looked around or anything. He said, "Try it and I'll hurt you." I thought, I just thought it. I didn't do anything, I just thought it, but he knew. Yeah.
Well, all of this suggests that human potential, human capability is much vaster than we normally appreciate.
Oh, yeah. The human mind has so much capability that it's just astounding. And we're beginning to tap into it. And science has finally come around to saying, yeah, well, let's pay some attention to this.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to be in a growth period as humans. I hope so.
Lyn Buchanan, thank you so much for sharing all of this
thank you.
with me.
Yeah.
It's been a real pleasure.
Good.
And thank you for being with us as well.